On the morning of Friday, September 30th, 2022, gunfire erupted in Ouagadougou, the capital city of Burkina Faso. It was the opening act of a coup that would shake the nation. By 8 p.m. local time on the same day, a striking scene unfolded on national television. A soldier in military uniform wearing a bulletproof vest and a red beret appeared on the Burkina Broadcasting Corporation, RTB. Surrounded by hooded and helmeted men, he delivered a bombshell announcement, one that will bring the entire country of Burkina Faso on a standstill. A 34-year-old captain was taking over as head of state, overthrowing Lieutenant Colonel Paul-Henri Sandaogo Damiba. In the moments that followed, the world came to the realization that the 7th military takeover had just happened in Burkina Faso. Few days after he was installed as the transitional president of Burkina Faso, he shocked the world by cutting ties with Western powers like France and the US. This singular decision made him a target, because in just 2 years of being the president, he has survived over a dozen assassination attempts, and now he is the most haunted president in the world. The big question is, who is this man? What is his true mission? And why do they want him out? Today we are diving into the story of a man who many has likened him to Thomas Sankara, not just for his sheer resemblance, but for his courage, tenacity, and love for his motherland. A man whose presence alone is sending shockwaves to the world, and his actions and ideologies is disrupting the entire political scene. This is a story of courage, dark secrets, greed, and betrayal. This is the story of Captain Ibrahim Traoré, the youngest president in the world. Ibrahim Traoré was born on the 14th of March 1998 in Kera, Bondokui, Mohun province of Burkina Faso. Traoré was born into a family that struggled with poverty. His mom had to do menial jobs to cater for her family. After receiving his primary education in Bondokui, Traoré attended a high school in Bobo Dioulasso, where he was known by his classmates and teachers as being quiet and very talented. Unlike his predecessors, like Paul-Henri Damiba and many other Burkinabe officers who embraced military careers as teenagers, Ibrahim Traoré had a civilian background before joining the army. After completing his secondary education, he moved to Ouagadougou, the country's political capital, in 2006 to pursue his tertiary education. He enrolled into the Joseph Kizebro University to study geology. While in the university, Traoré started exhibiting his leadership skills. He always fought for the right of students and became delegate in his department. After 3 years in uni, he graduated with honors, and shortly after that took the bold decision to join the George Namoano Military Academy, of which his predecessor Thomas Sankara and Paul-Henri Damiba were alumni. Upon his graduation from the academy, he was sent to Morocco for anti-aircraft training before being transferred to an infantry unit in Kaya, a town in northern Burkina Faso. 2 years later, in 2014, Traoré was promoted to lieutenant due to how loyal and dedicated he was. In the same year, he was sent to Mali to join MINUSMA, a United Nations peacekeeping force combating terrorism in Mali. While in Mali, Traoré fought tooth and nail against jihadists. In 2018, he was cited as one of the MINUSMA soldiers who showed courage during major rebel attacks in the Tombouctou region, where the jihadist attacks were rampant. After the mission in Mali, he subsequently returned to Burkina Faso, where he assisted in operations against the escalating jihadist insurgency. In 2019, Traoré fought at Djibo in the Operation Otopuanu offensive and several other counter-insurgency operations in the country's north. Despite being taunted as a major success, this operation resulted in only temporary withdrawal by militants from the region and corresponding increase in attacks elsewhere in the country. Ibrahim Traoré also served in the detachment of Marcoye in the northern Sahel region at the so-called three-border zone of Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, on the front line against jihadist groups, and took part in several operations there. People who knew him at the time said he exhibited leadership attributes, including being willful, courageous, and close to his men. In 2020, Ibrahim Traoré was promoted to the rank of captain. Rising to the rank of captain, he participated in numerous operations against jihadist insurgencies that plagued the Sahel region, saving multiple towns from jihadist attacks. His experience in counterterrorism and security operations allowed him to develop a keen understanding of the challenges facing his nation, and all these experiences would later play a great role in his life. In Burkina Faso, the attacks from the jihadist group included armed attacks, abduction, carjacking, explosives, rocket attacks, and ambushes. The most affected regions in Burkina Faso are the Sahel, North, Central North, and the East. Traoré was amongst the military officers who were dissatisfied with the way the leaders were handling the situation with the jihadists, and things escalated which led to a coup. In 2021, a humanitarian crisis was evident in Burkina Faso, and a vast majority of the population faced food insecurity. Towards the end of 2021, more than 3,000 people had been killed and over 2 million internally displaced. The situation in Burkina Faso was deteriorating. Traoré's growing awareness of the public's dissatisfaction with the government's handling of security issues led him to engage more actively in military and political discussions. He was dissatisfied with his country's leadership around this time, as he saw the widespread lack of equipment of Burkinabe soldiers, while politicians were handing out suitcases of money for bribery. He gradually became the spokesman for soldiers stationed in the north who were frustrated over their government. He began to advocate for reforms within the military and the broader political system, recognizing that the stability of Burkina Faso depended on effective leadership and accountability. While doing all these, he gained the trust and support of his colleagues. Ibrahim Traoré later joined the Patriotic Movement for Safeguard and Restoration, a group created by military officers and led by Paul Sandaogo Damiba. This growing frustration led to a coup. On January 24, 2022, Paul Damiba led a coup that ousted President Roch-Marc Christian Kabore, who had been the president of Burkina Faso since 2015, citing the need for a stronger military response to the insurgency. President Kabore was elected in 2015 and re-elected in 2020 to replace President Michel Kafando, who led the transitional government following 2014 popular revolution that ousted Blaise Compaoré. Blaise Compaoré ruled Burkina Faso for 27 years after taking power in the 1987 bloody coup that claimed the life of young revolutionary leader Thomas Sankara. Damiba cited the inability of Kabore to curb the jihadist insurgencies as the cause of the takeover and promised to restore security and stability, garnering support from both the military and segments of the population disillusioned with the previous government. He pledged to restore peace and help the over 2 million internally displaced people return to their homes. When Paul Damiba became head of state, he appointed Ibrahim Traoré in March 2022 to serve as the head of an artillery regiment in Kaya, a move that will later lead to his downfall. Unfortunately for Paul Damiba, many supporters of the January coup became dissatisfied with his performance regarding his inability to contain the jihadist insurgency and restore peace in the country. Even after Damiba took over, the jihadist attacks continued in major cities in Burkina Faso. Despite several attempts by Ibrahim Traoré and other officers to try to make Paul Damiba to focus and stick to the mission, his ambitions were diverting away from what they had set out to do, which is bringing and maintain peace in the country. The dissatisfaction about the situation was highest among younger officers, known as Cobras, who fought against the rebels at the front lines. These workers did not receive their salaries on time, and they also faced logistics problem. Instead, Paul Damiba sat in his air-conditioned office in Ouagadougou and focused on other things instead of listening to the cries of the Cobra soldiers. After multiple trips by Ibrahim Traoré to talk some sense to Damiba, all his efforts fell on deaf ears. When the officers noticed that Damiba was not willing to stick to the initial plan of the group, they decided to plot his overthrow. But what really triggered the overthrow of Damiba was the attack on the military convoy headed for Djibo by jihadists. This attack on the convoy claimed the lives of 37 people, including 27 soldiers. In the army barracks, the frustration was clear, especially among the youngest soldiers. This defeat of the army was pinned on Damiba. 1 week before the event that led to the death of 27 soldiers, President Damiba had mobilized a 70-strong delegation to attend the United Nations Summit in New York. There, Damiba argued that his government was making some progress in the fight against terrorism, and he also asked for support from the international community. The trip to the United Nations Summit was perceived at home in Burkina Faso as wasteful and in total disregard of the dire insecurity situation of the country. Once more, Captain Ibrahim Traoré, on behalf of many aggrieved soldiers, went to Ouagadougou to speak with President Damiba. He asked for an audience with the presidents, but never received an answer. Faced with what they saw as contempt, Traoré and other officers of his generation decided to take action. In the morning of September 30th, 2022, gunfire erupted across Ouagadougou, the capital of Burkina Faso. It was the opening act of a coup that would shake the nation. By 8 p.m. local time, a striking scene unfolded on national television. A soldier in military uniform, wearing a bulletproof vest and a red beret, appeared on the Burkina Broadcasting Corporation, RTB. Surrounded by hooded and helmeted men, he delivered a bombshell announcement. Captain Ibrahim Traoré was taking over as head of the Patriotic Movement for Safeguard and Restoration, MPSR, overthrowing Lieutenant Colonel Paul Henry Sandaogo Damiba. A military takeover had just happened in Burkina Faso. The coup leaders justified their actions by accusing Damiba of betraying their shared vision. They claimed he had failed to address the deteriorating security situation that had initially motivated the January which brought him to power. Instead, they said, Damiba had focused on unfortunate political adventures, neglecting the fight to reclaim territories occupied by jihadist insurgents. According to Traoré, he and other officers had attempted to persuade Damiba to refocus on the rebellion, but his refusal left them with no choice but to remove him. Discontent had been brewing for months, especially among younger officers who carried the hardest burden of the fight against armed groups linked to ISIL and Al-Qaeda. The elite Cobra unit, known for its frontline operations, faced delays in pay, further deepening frustrations. When the plotters launched their coup on September 30th, Traoré, still a captain, found strong support within the Cobra unit, which played a key role in the operation. Traoré's junta declared its commitment to addressing the country's challenges. They vowed to refocus on national security, restore territorial integrity, and uphold Burkina Faso's international commitments, including respect for human rights. Additionally, they announced plans to diversify Burkina Faso's international partnerships in the fight against jihadism. However, the coup soon escalated into a broader crisis. On October 1st, with their takeover appearing to struggle, Traoré and his officers accused Damiba of seeking refuge at the French military base in Camboasin, where they claimed he was planning a counteroffensive. In a nation filled with anti-French sentiment, this claim ignited outrage. Although the French government denied the allegation, thousands of protesters took to the streets of Ouagadougou and Bobo Dioulasso, targeting the French embassy and cultural institutes. What began as a military coup transformed into a popular uprising against perceived foreign interference. During the night, momentum shifted decisively in Traoré's favor. Several army units, including the Air Force and Special Forces, declared their allegiance to him. By the next morning, Damiba was forced to resign. He reportedly agreed to step down on the condition that his safety and the safety of his allies were guaranteed. The whole world was astonished 6 days later when he came to swear in as the interim leader after he had relied on the strength of a hidden weapon. At that time, he arrived at the venue before the press and its writers, wearing military attire and walking with a step that made you remember his role was to engage in combat. What surprised those present was that he was wearing a face mask, as he didn't want those watching him to see his face, which could have scared some of them. Then a document with 3 sentences in French was handed to him. With his hand raised, he said, "I swore before the people of Burkina Faso and on my honor to preserve, respect, uphold, and defend the Constitution, the Chart of Transition, and the laws to make every effort to guarantee justice to all inhabitants of Burkina Faso." At just 34 years old, Captain Ibrahim Traoré was installed as transitional president, becoming the world's youngest leader. Thousands of Burkinabe citizens gathered in the capital to celebrate his ascension in what resembled a victory parade. Captain Ibrahim Traoré remarked that he has no interest in the formalities of wearing political suits or engaging in political posturing. His focus is on reviving a nation that seemed to be falling apart. He declared that he is prepared to make any sacrifice to ensure his country can once again breathe the air of peace and freedom. No sacrifice will be too great to take this country out of the situation in which it finds itself. So our commitment is for a return to peace, and our compass will always be the people. However, it became evident to the more observant minds that Ibrahim Traoré is backed by a man of St. Petersburg, Vladimir Putin. Just 2 days after the coup took place, a journalist from the New York Times, Eliane Pelletier, stated, "In Burkina Faso, the man who staged a coup was himself ousted by another." In this article, Eliane Pelletier revealed that he had uncovered clear evidence of the involvement of the Wagner Group and Russia in everything Traoré did. 2 days later, Edward McAllister of Reuters corroborated this, affirming that he had followed the developments closely and found that those attempting to challenge or undermine Traoré should tread carefully, as Russia stood firmly behind him. Nevertheless, Traoré denied all these claims, telling the French TV station France 24 that he did not need Wagner soldiers from Russia, as he had already established a local version of Wagner in Burkina Faso. He stated, "I do not need Wagner soldiers from Russia because I have our own Wagner here, called VDP, Volontaires pour la Défense de la Patrie. These are volunteer fighters ready to protect and defend the land of Burkina Faso." However, the secrecy surrounding his connections with the Russians came to light on the 27th of October 2023 in St. Petersburg, when he attended the Russia-Africa Summit. During the event, he openly stated that Russia is one family with Burkina Faso. For him, it is not just Burkina Faso, as Russia is one family with all of Africa due to the shared history between Africa and Russia. Traoré said, "It feels like a family in the sense that Russia is also a family for Africa. It is a family because we have the same history. Russia made enormous sacrifices to liberate the world from Nazism during the Second World War. The people of Africa, our grandfathers, were also forcibly deported to help Europe get rid of Nazism. We share the same history in the sense that we are the forgotten peoples of the world, whether in the history books, in documentaries, or in film." Those who heard this said, "Now Traoré, we have proof. You can no longer deny your ties with the Russians, especially since you call them brothers, and openly declare without hesitation your support for working with them." Traoré initially promised to hold democratic elections by July 2024. However, on the 24th of May 2024, the junta announced an extension of its rule for another 5 years, with Traoré remaining in power. The decision sparked mixed reactions domestically and internationally, as many questioned whether it marked a retreat from the promised transition to civilian governance. Since Traoré's rise to power, relations with France, Burkina Faso's former colonial ruler, have remained tense. Demonstrations demanding an end to the French military presence reflect a broader sentiment across West Africa and the Sahel, where anti-French sentiment is growing. Traoré's leadership has also seen Burkina Faso strengthen ties with other global partners, signaling a shift in the nation's foreign policy. In January 2023, Burkina Faso gave France 1 month to withdraw its troops as it ended a military accord that allowed French troops to fight insurgents on its territory, citing a wish for Burkina Faso to defend itself. The following month, in February 2023, the two countries, France and Burkina Faso, officially marked the end of French military operations in the West African nation after a flag-lowering ceremony at the French Special Force camp. Since the time of the coup up to today, Ibrahim Traoré has consistently appeared in military combat attire, complete with a red beret, tactical gloves, and a pistol on his right thigh. This has become his signature look. So today, how is the youngest president in the world, Captain Ibrahim Traoré, living? Does he ride in luxurious and expensive cars like other African presidents? Does he live in lavish homes? Ibrahim Traoré has chosen a different path, one that rejects the status quo. While most African leaders live in palaces, indulge in luxury, and draw enormous salaries, Traoré made an unprecedented decision. He refused the $76,000 salary, the salary for presidents in his country. Instead, he kept his military captain's pay, which is significantly less. He chose to put his people above personal gain. His story is not just about Burkina Faso. It's about the future of African leadership. In just 2 years, Ibrahim Traoré has done what many leaders on the continent can only dream of achieving in a lifetime. But what sets him apart isn't just his choice to decline wealth, it's his entire approach to leadership. To give some context, in Burkina Faso, the average presidential salary is $76,000 annually. For comparison, the average salary of an African president is $170,000 a year. Meanwhile, the average monthly income in Burkina Faso is a mere $73. But Traoré didn't stop at rejecting his salary. In a bold move to ensure that his people's resources went toward their future, he reduced government salaries by 20%. This was not just a symbolic gesture, it was a real effort to redirect resources from the government's pockets to the nation's most pressing needs. What Traoré did with the money saved from his salary and the cuts in government wages got people's attention. He reinvested it back into the country, focusing on long-term projects that would empower his people. Traoré invested in building schools, mechanizing agriculture, and even setting up textile factories. He took the initiative to create domestic tomato processing plants to reduce dependency on imports and build a more sustainable agricultural sector. But perhaps most impressively, he laid the foundation for oil refineries. These are not short-term projects. They're long-term investments that will drive the country's economy for decades to come. This isn't just talk. These are real, measurable steps toward transforming Burkina Faso's economy. In a continent where most leaders flaunt their wealth, boasting fleets of expensive cars, private jets, and sprawling mansions, Traoré has chosen simplicity. He drives a basic car, wears military fatigues, and lives modestly. This is a stark contrast to leaders across Africa, where opulence is often seen as a symbol of power. Traoré has rejected that notion entirely. He lives by a simple principle. His duty is to his people, not to luxury. His leadership style has earned him comparisons to Burkina Faso's revolutionary hero, Thomas Sankara. Like Sankara, Traoré values service over personal comfort, proving that humility in leadership doesn't equate to weakness. It strengthens the bond between a leader and their people. While many presidents would use their position for self-enrichment, Ibrahim Traoré has done the opposite. His focus has been entirely on service. He has reduced his salary, rejected the perks of office, and ensured that the government's financial resources benefit the country's development. This is true leadership in action. Ibrahim Traoré's leadership is not about self-promotion or seeking personal gain. In fact, little is known about his personal life. Unlike many African leaders who parade their families and relationships in the public eye, Traoré keeps his private life completely out of the spotlight. You won't find photos of his wife or children online, an uncommon practice for heads of state. His focus remains firmly on his country's future, not personal attention. This level of dedication to service is rare in world leadership, let alone in Africa, where political figures often use their positions for self-promotion. In less than 2 years, Ibrahim Traoré has proven that leadership doesn't have to come with excess wealth or luxury. His focus on humility, service, and prioritizing the welfare of his people has made him an exception in a continent where power is often synonymous with personal enrichment. By rejecting the idea that a president must be rich and live in luxury, Ibrahim Traoré is paving the way for a new kind of leadership in Africa, one where the people come first, not the politicians. On September 11, 2024, Burkina Faso's president faced a life-threatening attack in the capital, Ouagadougou. A covert plot targeting the country's stability was foiled when the military uncovered a scheme involving a mysterious figure who entered Burkina Faso under the guise of a business trip. This individual brought with him 5 billion CFA francs, which were intended not for development, but to bribe soldiers into destabilizing the country. The money was meant to fund a coup and shift Burkina Faso's leadership. The suspect, linked to influential foreign interests, sought to exploit the country's weaknesses. Burkina Faso, abundant in natural resources such as gold and other minerals, holds a strategic position in West Africa. As the country had made strides towards stability, certain foreign powers viewed this as a threat. The plot was simple: bribe soldiers with large sums of money to secure their loyalty, igniting chaos that would shift power. However, the soldiers approached by the suspect were not easily convinced. These seasoned veterans had fought against insurgents and extremist groups. Their loyalty to Burkina Faso remained unshaken, and instead of rejecting the offer, they played along, reporting the suspect's moves to their superiors. Over weeks, they gathered critical information and were able to expose the full extent of the conspiracy. On the day of the planned exchange, a sting operation was set into motion. The suspect was apprehended at a warehouse, his suitcase filled with the cash meant for the coup. Hidden cameras and surveillance had recorded everything, providing undeniable evidence of the plot. The suspect's arrest revealed a far-reaching conspiracy with connections to foreign operatives and mercenaries operating in the Sahel region. These operatives, funded by powerful foreign entities, were part of a broader strategy to destabilize Burkina Faso and other West African nations. The goal was to exploit the region's resources and weaken national sovereignty. This plot wasn't just about money, it was a power play against the self-sufficient Burkina Faso that had begun to reclaim control over its resources. Foreign interests had benefited from exploiting the region for years, and the rise of a stable, independent Burkina Faso threatened that dominance. The foiled conspiracy highlights the lengths foreign powers will go to maintain control over Africa's resources. It also signals the growing resistance of African nations like Burkina Faso against exploitation. The plot serves as a warning. Attempts to assert independence will not be tolerated. With all these assassination attempts, Traoré supporters from all across the world decided to rally behind him. On April 30th, 2025, a global wave of solidarity surged in support of Burkina Faso's transitional leader, Captain Ibrahim Traoré. In Ouagadougou, thousands gathered at Place de la Révolution, chanting, "Long live Captain Traoré," and waving both Burkinabe and Russian flags. This demonstration followed the junta's announcement of a foiled coup attempt, allegedly orchestrated from neighboring Ivory Coast, and recent criticisms from US General Michael Langley accusing Traoré of misusing gold reserves for his personal gains. Internationally, the Union of Democratic Socialists, UDS, in the Democratic Republic of Congo issued a statement expressing unwavering support for Traoré, denouncing imperialist plots against him, and urging Africans to defend their sovereignty. These events underscore Traoré's growing stature as a symbol of resistance against foreign interference and a proponent of Pan-African unity. Since becoming the president of Burkina Faso, Ibrahim Traoré has embarked on massive developmental projects aimed at transforming the country. From the construction of new airports, roads, school and hospital, to the launching of vocational training programs, Ibrahim Traoré is on the path of making Burkina Faso a self-sufficient nation. Despite everything Captain Traoré has been through, one thing he has successfully mastered is keeping his family out of the limelight. Though not confirmed, it has been rumored that Ibrahim Traoré is married with 2 boys. For a man whose life is constantly under attack, it makes sense for him to shield his family. To conclude, Ibrahim Traoré is one African leader who is here to stay. His courage, resilience, and dedication is one to be studied. He is a symbol for hope in African leadership and Pan-Africanism and should serve as an example for other Africa leaders. He is here to stay, and his legacy will live forever. Thanks for watching this video. We hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends. Also, make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of our subsequent videos. See you on our next one.